Hello. In this video I'm going to go over some basics about computer graphics and about the digital workflow that you're going to go through as you develop your portfolio. So let's start with talking about there are really two kinds of graphics that exist on a computer. Raster and vector graphics. So these are everything you create that exists on the computer is one of these two file formats. Raster graphics, which we see on the left, are made up of individual picture elements, a pixel. And as you can see when you look at the letters on the left, if you look in close, they are actually made up of little tiles that actually look like a mosaic. And there are shades of gray. We look at the sample on the right, and that is a vector graphic, where it's a mathematically determined shape, where it's clean and precise, and as much as we zoom in on it, it will stay crisp and precise. Vector graphics are most text that you work with. They are everything you produce in AutoCAD. They are lines that you would produce in InDesign, Illustrator. And they remain crisp. The advantage to rasters is that they can display many more colors, gradients, shades. So everything that is a photograph, most of your files in Photoshop, most of the images that you get over the internet, those are all raster images, JPEGs, all of that group of images. So in our portfolio, you're going to have both raster and vector images in using InDesign. So let's just take a look at the advantages and the disadvantages. Raster images, as I mentioned, includes all photographs and computer renderings. They're dependent on resolution. As you zoom in or enlarge the image breaks down into pixels. And typically you edit it with Photoshop. Vector graphics includes most of the output from AutoCAD, most of the output from Revit, except for the renderings, and other computer line drawings. These maintain resolution no matter how much you enlarge the image. If it's possible, you should try to avoid converting it to Photoshop to render them. Unless you're going to apply color, you don't need to convert it into Photoshop format, where you could lose resolution. So if it's going to just stay a black and white image, better to do the solid fill and a white background within AutoCAD and not run it through Photoshop at all. Print as a PDF to insert it into something like InDesign. So I'll go over the digital workflow, and then we'll talk about individual pieces for your portfolio. So this is just a graphic format of all these different kind of graphic files that you'll have. So SketchUp and Revit images and renderings, you're going to bring those into Photoshop. Any scanned images, photographs of models, photographs of drawings, all of your digital photos, these are all going to be raster images, and you're going to want to edit them in Photoshop. Stuff coming out of AutoCAD, you can actually produce a PDF where you could open it in Illustrator, and ultimately the PDF allows you to bring it into InDesign. Also, you can bring in text, ideally that you edit in Microsoft Word. It's easier to work with editing text in Microsoft Word. You bring that and paste that into InDesign. And then outputting PDFs, yes, we keep coming back to that, portable document file formats. You can create a printed and digital portfolio. You can also create an online website. So that is, in a nutshell, how we will get our output. These are the steps that you go through. So we're going to edit a lot of our raster images with Photoshop. If we want to render an AutoCAD drawing or a Revit line drawing, then you would bring those into Photoshop. But if you don't want to render them, they go as PDFs and we bring them into InDesign. So I hope that is relatively clear. Let's talk a little bit more about the ingredients that go into your portfolio. So now we'll talk about photographing your work. So some of your work does need to be photographed. The good news is that if you don't have a camera, I have 2 cameras and I have a smartphone. I like my cameras. They give me more control, more precision, lots of other features. But most smartphones in the present era have very good cameras on them. We just have to make the most of those cameras. So the quality of most, and I'm looking mostly at iPhones and the leading Samsung phones, have very good photographic quality. Now, for the most part, we'll take photographs with them. What I would like you to do is, for anything that are sketches or line work, you should use a scanning app. I use Adobe Scan, which is it's one of the few things that Adobe has for free, and you can download it on your various, application stores. So I've been using that, and it creates PDFs that I can then bring into InDesign. Now, if you're taking photographs of models, you want to use natural lighting. You want to turn your flash off. That's going to give you hot spots that aren't going to look good. You want to take it into daylight, typically, and just photograph it outside. So unless you get a really elaborate setup, artificial lighting is almost always going to look bad and uneven, whereas sunlight is going to look comfortable and natural. You want to use a natural background. It can be a found background like a lawn or a nice even sidewalk, or bring a sheet of cardboard or foam core to create a background. Don't get worked up. A lot of people spend a lot of time in Photoshop removing backgrounds. You don't need to do that. The background is okay unless it's really obtrusive. The problem is if you just take a photograph of it sitting on your messy desk. That's not very good because that's really busy as far as the background. We don't want to get distracted from your model. Also, remember to get photographs at eye level, the way you would if it was a real building. Try to get a shot of the interior. The really good thing about a lot of our camera phones is they're a relatively wide-angle camera, so they can give us a nice interior view of larger models. If you transfer it to yourself by emailing it to yourself, make sure you send it at the highest resolution, or transfer the images directly to your computer with the appropriate cable. So I could try to show you some examples, and I'll get to those a little bit later, but I'm hoping this gives you sort of in a nutshell what you need to do. In our studio space, we had a really good photographic setup. It's hard to replicate that at home. So your best bet is to take photographs of these in daylight with your flash turned off. So I hope this overview was helpful in you getting started in your documentation.